Is this thing on? Well. Zack Snyder has shared that wacky hashtag sell Snyderverse to Netflix. It looks like he hasn't moved on after all. Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. On TikTok, Mad Mickey's World, and on Snapchat, BMouth60 or Mick, your host with the most. Welcome to Mondays. Yes, we're at the beginning of the week yet again. Welcome to Monday's edition of the DCU Daily. And no, Zack Snyder has not moved on from the Snyderverse. Remember last year when he said he would love to do a Dark Knight Returns adaptation, but is he still interested in finishing his Justice League universe story? Listen, this is how I see Zack Snyder. You know, if you've known me for long enough, if you've been following my platform for any time at all, you know I love Zack Snyder. I love his work on Watchmen, on 300, and his DC Snyderverse trilogy is outstanding. And his plans were amazing, better than James Gunn's plans for the DCU as far as I'm concerned. And it's ironic that James Gunn, about a year or two ago, called the Sell Snyderverse to Netflix hashtag a wacky hashtag. Because when he first became the co-CEO of DC Studios, James Gunn became very, very cocky and was responding to lots of fake news, lots of Snyderverse stands that were posting against him, blah, 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 even commenting that the Sell Snyderverse to Netflix hashtag was a wacky hashtag. Not so wacky now. And of course, James Gunn isn't responding to Snyderverse stands anymore because reality has set in. He now understands the reality of running a studio where actually you're not just answering to yourself, you're answering to a lot of people. I made this point the other day. He said in the early days, the only people that, who are running, who get to make the decisions on DC Studios properties are me and Peter. We're the only ones that are going to be giving the notes. He now knows this isn't true. We heard the other day from that podcast, which I played an excerpt from, that when they saw James Gunn's Superman movie, when WB, including David Zaslav, saw that movie, they weren't very happy with the tone and gave him notes. Reality has set in for James Gunn, and he hasn't got time to come after the Snyderverse stands. What I love about the Snyderverse stands is they're ruthless, they're relentless, and they know how to bring something down, but they also know how to celebrate something they love. Zack Snyder would still be making DCEU movies if it was up to Zack Snyder. He'd be making them till the day he retired, right? The only reason he's not at WB anymore making these movies is because WB drove him out. Even when he was editing together Zack Snyder's Justice League and the whole nonsense over Green Lantern, well, we're developing Green Lantern, so you can't use your Green Lantern, which was ridiculous, right? Because they were going on about the multiverse, so why couldn't Zack put his superior John Stewart in that cameo in Zack Snyder's Justice League? It's very, very sad. I would buy a copy right now of Zack Snyder's Justice League with that Green Lantern moment on it. Hopefully, even if Zack never restores the Snyderverse, at least they allow him to do that. And people, after that happened, and I'm sorry for the lateness of responding to this, because I didn't know about this. Because of the time difference in the US and here in Cyprus, I go down my X-Twitter feed and I find things out a little belatedly sometimes. I do try my best to keep up with what's going on. That's the point of me doing these videos, right? So I do apologize about that. But we're going to talk about it right here and right now. People are asking me, what do you think, Mick? Has Zack moved on? No, he never did. Even though he wasn't talking about it, he was busy doing Rebel Moon and he was fixated on that. And you know, I'm very balanced on Rebel Moon. I thought the first film, even the cut down version, was pretty good. I didn't like the sequel. I haven't seen the cut downs yet. I haven't seen the director's cut of the second movie yet. I think I've seen most of the cut down of the first, the director's cut of the first one. But I wasn't very impressed with the cut down, the shortened version of the sequel. I thought there was a lot of filler there. I was very, very disappointed. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean I don't love Zack Snyder anymore as a person, as a man, as a creative. You know, whatever I think of Rebel Moon narratively, visually, Zack was still on song. I just wish he picked another project to kind of fulfill his Star Wars fantasy. I kind of think that Rebel Moon might have been the wrong choice for him. The blatantness of the Nazi uniforms and all that, I don't like. It's too on the nose. And, you know, George Lucas, you know, had the stormtroopers and all that, and it's supposed to be an allegory of Nazi Germany and all of that, but it's understated. The problem these days, everything is too much on the nose. But forget that. I love Man of Steel. I love Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. I adore Zack Snyder's Justice League. I love Wonder Woman 2017, which Zack had a lot to do with. He directed a lot of stuff in that movie, whether you want to believe it or not. The history lesson, we know that was Zack Snyder. You can scream to the wall. That was Zack Snyder. It was very similar to to the history lesson in Man of Steel, right? So we know it was Zack Snyder. There's no way Jenkins could have directed that way. It's like the No Man sequence. We know No Man Land sequence. Let me get it right. We know that was Zack. We know that wasn't Patty Jenkins. Now, Zack Snyder's filmography written all over it. It's stunning. It's beautiful. It's one of the greatest moments in comic book movie history. The man can shoot a scene. He shoots beauty. He shoots art. And the narrative of his movies are also very beautiful as far as I'm concerned. So I'm a fan. So there's no one that would be more happier if we heard they were going to restore the Snyderverse. Do I think it's still a possibility? As I've always said to you, Snyderverse stands, always keep fighting. Never give up. Even if there's not a chance in hell, never give up. Keep your voices being heard. First of all, it annoys them. It annoys the studio because you're very good at talking about Zack and his stuff and your love for him. And it annoys them. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. They're happy to annoy us, right? They're happy to say F you to us. Like, what's his name? Alex Garland or whatever his name is, the guy who directed Civil War. I don't think it's Alex Garland. Whatever his bloody name is. Should we just call him Judy Garland and be done with it? But anyway, they're happy to crap on us. So we can crap on them at the same time. But don't give up. I think WB are so desperate that yes, restoring the Snyderverse is becoming a more and more realistic possibility, as impossible and as unrealistic as it seems. The more mistakes that Gunn and Safran and Zaslav make, the more they keep on looking at Zack Snyder. Right now they're asking themselves, how did this man do it? He was making his movies. He brought on David Ayer. He had a plan. And he didn't seem to feel the pressure at all. Now let's not forget, Zack Snyder was under a more immense pressure than James Gunn has ever been developing the DCU. There was people attacking him and people using the death of his daughter to try and hurt him. There were so many disgusting things said about Zack. The overreaction to Man of Steel. The overreaction to BVS. Don't forget, they were blaming him for stuff in Man of Steel that wasn't his fault. He didn't write Man of Steel. The story was constructed by Nolan and Goyer beautifully as far as I'm concerned. Zack did the visual narrative and they wrote the story of the movie. And I think both fragments of that was beautiful as far as I'm concerned. But anything made by human hands, as we know, isn't perfect. Zack didn't decide for the tornado sequence to have the narrative that it did with Jonathan Kent, Park Kent going back for the dog or telling Clark not to save him and Clark to listen to him. That was down to Goyer mostly and Nolan. So if you don't like that, at least place the blame where it's supposed to be at. It wasn't Zack's idea to snap Zod's neck. That was on Goya. Even Christopher Nolan questioned Goya on that. And Goya gave him some satisfactory answers. It's a very interesting situation, right? Everyone's got an opinion on that, but it wasn't down to Zack. People loved blaming Zack. I mean, I think they'd love to put the Kennedy assassination on Zack Snyder and blame him for that as well and say he's probably related to Jack the Ripper. That's how irrational and illogical people get over Zack Snyder. But it doesn't matter. The man makes beautiful art. And in 50 years' time, people are going to be looking back at Watchmen, at 300, at his DC trilogy and go, this is a work of art. And people are going to say to them, well, some people thought it was terrible and outrageous. He broke some canon, blah, blah, blah. And people are going to think, this generation, were insane. We had it good. The way Zack Snyder puts comic book movies on the screen is the way they should be. The guy is putting panels on the screen. Now, like the Ang Lee Incredible Hulk movie, he did it too literally. He was splitting screens and stuff. I think it was beautiful. I loved that movie myself, but maybe that was too far. But Zack really knows how to put a comic book frame on the screen. And I think I love what he does. I love the kind of music that he had Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer do for his trilogy as well. So Junkie did, I think Junkie XL did Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I think Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer did BVS. And then Man of Steel was solely done by the genius, the god, the musical lord, that is Sir Hans Zimmer. I just love those three movies, right? But not just those three movies. The Wonder Woman movie, right? Now, I know Zack didn't have much to do with Aquaman, but I love Aquaman as well. Zack had nothing to do with Black Adam. I love that movie. They're the movies I love within the DCEU. And I think the first Shazam is okay from a certain point of view and a certain level. But I love the Snyderverse. I love certain elements of the DCEU. And the reactive nature of the studio then is the reason that Zack had to leave. And that is in the past. I keep on saying this, you can't rewrite history. But you can allow a great director to come back and finish his work. Imagine this, James Gunn makes an announcement and says, Zack will get to finish his DC project. You know what's going to happen, James? All of a sudden, you've got around maybe 10,000 people, maybe 100,000 people around the world, probably more than that, happy with you. You know what they're going to do all of a sudden? Unboycott your Superman movie and your DCU. All of a sudden, your movies are going to get more positivity from a fan base that keeps on throwing negativity at you. And some people will say, well, people shouldn't be, James shouldn't be held to ransom by these people. But Zack Snyder is willing to deliver something good for DC Studios. It has nothing to do with your Superman, right? Although, it's a shame that Henry Cavill isn't your Superman, but that's your loss. Now, I don't think Henry's too old to play Superman, and there's nothing wrong with an older Superman. If it was up to me, right, if I was running DC Studios, or whatever we would call it, right now I'd be calling Brandon Routh so we could adapt the Superman 78 graphic novels. I would call Tom Welling, Michael Rosenbaum, Alan Miles, Christine Crook, all of them, right? And I've written 5 seasons of Metropolis, a Smallville spin-off, right? I know exactly how to deal with it. I know exactly how to deal with the nonsense that Greg Berlanti did in Crisis with Smallville. I've written an awesome sequel series to Smallville. So those people will be getting calls. Under Gunn, these things will never happen because it's all about Gunn, right? But if James Gunn restored the Snyderverse right now, he would make more money on his projects. Now, if we're saying we can have a Robert Pattinson Batman and a DCU Batman, why can't we have a Henry Cavill Superman and a David Corenswet Superman? Is it maybe because Zack's stuff is going to look much better and James Gunn's going to look like a muppet? He won't even release the haircut because he's intimidated that David's cut is going to be better than what he did with the Suicide Squad.